What's up, amigos? Commander Jaime here today. I'm bringing you another Aquaforce deck profile. This one's a bit different. This is definitely out of the norm. This deck profile actually goes to credit to both Wavenation, an Aquaforce YouTuber and also player, and then of course Zaee, who is also a competitive player and he's mostly seen in the Reddit scene. And so both of them actually got together and really concocted this kind of build to see how can we push Aquaforce to a more competitive type of build. And honestly, I was really impressed with what the build that they actually came up with. And as you can see, it's using older cards. So there's a bit of a nostalgia here too. So the deck doesn't really have a proper name, so we decided to give it call it Riptide Premium. Essentially, the deck is geared abusing Riptide. We're actually playing for Riptide, and then by abusing it, we mean by actually just making it restand as much as possible. And as you can see, we have Orphea, which is the booster that basically makes anything a tidal assault by counterblasting and soul blasting in the GB1 when it's active. And then GB1 starter from actually the Tabas trial deck back in the day that actually would go into soul by a counterblast, give a unit the right tech skill to make it a magnum assault, where basically at the end of the battle, it can restand and get +2 to the end of the turn. So it's just another card that makes anything restand. And then of course Lambros can restand actually on first stride. The only thing that it can't do first stride is actually give a +10k power up. But since Riptide's a really big card, then we could just abuse this guy already. So, and then also I wanted to give a shout out to a good friend of mine, StandUpTheSoryu. He's also an Aquaforce YouTuber. He actually has a deck profile video that is basically the same deck profile. I think maybe there's like a card or two that's different. But he covers this as well, and honestly, it's his style of content too. So any Aquaforce players that are actually already interested in this kind of content, I highly recommend checking out his channel, and you will definitely give some likes, subscribe, and all that kind of stuff for him. Spread the love. Aqua Life, baby, right? All right, let's get right into it. Let's start with the grade 3s. So the grade 3 lineup is a bit heavy, more than usual. We are actually playing 11 grade 3s. This is the only, basically, the one card value that you could pitch to Stride. I play no Stride fighters. It seems that, honestly, a lot of the rear guards in the grade 3 lineup just serve as rear guards, essentially. And essentially, you just want to ride Naval Gazer. Naval Gazer actually has a really good skill when you actually do your first grade 3 right turn. So when it's the third battle or more, when it attacks, you can counterblast, restand a unit, and then he gets +10k. At first, we were like thinking maybe he should have just given the 10k to the rear guard instead of himself. But now, what you typically do is basically you call a tidal assault or an algos to do the first, second battle, and then you have another column that really just attacks, and you got your third wave there. And then Riptide, he has a rear guard skill where basically he can only attack when it's the fourth battle or more. But when he does, he gets a 20k for the battle. So he becomes a 32k beater. So that's why that's important. He's just a really big beat stick by himself, but he's restricted by attacking fourth battle or more. And so that way you get to attack for the fourth battle, and then you can attack with Naval Gazer at that point. Use his skill, restand the Riptide, so you can actually abuse Riptide on the first grade 3 right turn. So that's why Naval Gazer is actually preferred to be the first try rather than some other card like Maelstrom, for example. It's really just to promote the Riptide abuse, essentially. And then to follow up with another grade 3 that also works with the rear guard circle is Hydro Hurricane Dragon. You can also use Diamantes as the restanding rear guard. It's really up to you in your current metagame. If you want more restanders, go that route. If you need some retire power like this guy, basically on place, counterblast, kill anything on your opponent's side, it might be more appreciated in the metagame that you're in, depending on if you're going to locals or the regional tournament. And so right now I'm actually just playing the 3 Hydro Hurricanes. It is really nice because there are some annoying grade 1s in the back row, or maybe some units that need to be killed ASAP. So you don't have to worry about using your battles up against that rear guard trying to kill it, where you should be more directed to be aggressive against your opponent's vanguard and really dishing out that damage as fast as possible. And like I said, Riptide basically 32k beater, can only attack fourth battle or more, and we are playing 4 of it because we want to see it as soon as possible. There are ways you can call him early game with the wheel assault effect, so you can get him right on grade 2 turn and go ham from there. And then of course I just told you about the grade 3 turn play. And then if you first stride, you can do the Lambros play with him and basically get that abuse as well again. And so for the grade zeros, I'm going to go from grade 0 to grade 1 to grade 2 in this form. So for our starter, we actually play Officer Cadet Andre. Let me get that focus right there. Like I said again, this guy is actually from the child deck back from when Tavas came out. So back in basically GBT02 time, when G era basically happened for Aquaforce. And like I said, you can actually counterplay as put him to Soul, choose one of your rear guards, and at the end of the battle, that unit attack Vanguard. You can restand it, give it +2. Now, it has the once per turn clause, which used to be a problem back then, but now because of the ruling, you can actually just trigger any time that you want. So if the Riptide or any other beater like Coral Assault already attacked the Vanguard, you can choose not to activate it just yet until after, let's say, a Lambros power-up or an Alexandra's power-up, or even just restanding by Lambros himself, because you can get triggers, and you rather restand the unit if it has triggers on it, because it's just a bigger beat stick. So you can control that and make that restand happen at the end, after the drive track, essentially. And so with the trigger lineup, it's more of a consistent build in the sense of the triggers. We're playing the 6 draw, the 6 crit, PGs, of course, so we can make more room in the grade 1s. You want the ones, the crits that go into Soul plus 10k. Very good. And it also helps with the Soul, since cards like Orphea do cost a Soul Blast, and there might be a chance where you actually use Gaphilia a little more often to make sure you have Counterblast to have, because Lambros is basically GB2 restricted. So if you do fall into Lambros and you already have enough cards face up in the G zone, you can actively just countercharge with Gaphilia. So usually you don't want to do that with Alexandro's plays, but if you're going to default back to Lambros, because Lambros is free, he doesn't have a Counterblast, but if you want to use the Counterblast on an Orphea, which does use it, then that might come up actually. So putting these cards into the Soul is much appreciated in this build. And then of course I just added vanilla triggers for the crits to make it 6 crit. And then a 4 V-Series help, because we want to make sure that we have the V-Series power up in this sense. So we get to abuse Riptide as much as possible. Now to the grade 1s. So we're playing 4 Wheel Assault right here. And honestly, Wheel Assault is the one that you want to ride. Mainly because once your opponent gives you that Counterblast, you could ride the grade 2 turn and Superior Call anything. And honestly, you want to Superior Call the Riptide if you have it in hand. My best advice too, since you are playing 11 grade 3s, I usually mulligan all of them, so that way I can make sure I have my grade 1, 2 ride basically, make sure that's intact, and then you can actually have some early game, and eventually you actually draw into the grade 3s, because you're playing 11 grade 3s, so you're gonna get it out. And then of course later in the game, or even in the grade 2 turn, you can abuse it as a rear guard by swapping positions, so you can make a bunch of battles happen early on. Especially when you're having like Coral Assault and Riptide in the mix, you can actually just have those powerful battles even at grade 2. And then when you have an Excel Circle and Striding, you could just abuse it there as well. For the 4 over here, it's Nicholas. He basically is on place, Vanguard or rear guard. You can actually check the top 7 cards for an Algos, and you can add it to your hand. So it's basically a +1 if you find it and hit it. And then it gets a +3 as well at the end of that. So if you miss, you still get the +3. So he's an 11k booster or a beater. Either way, depending on your opponent's Vanguard power, you can use him as an attacker, or you can use him to make bigger columns that can potentially break thresholds, or just make your opponent drop harder guard, essentially. And honestly, this guy might end up being replaced once the new set comes out. Baragios is really good in the sense because you can search the top 5 for a grade 3 and then you discard a card. And honestly, we can search for key pieces like Riptide or your main grade 3 ride or any utility grade 3 that you put in. And so I feel like that might be more beneficial to the deck than just Nicholas trying to get a free plus with Algos. And Algos is good, but it's not as important as your grade 3 pieces, if that makes sense, at least with this build. And then of course we have the 3 Orphea. Now, Orphea, like I said, she's GB1. At the end of the battle, it boosted. The unit that it boosted, you can Counterblast, Soul Blast, restand it, give it -5k, and basically makes anything a Tidal Assault with that cost. And so you want to make sure that you do that on a unit that's big, has triggers on it, ideally Riptide and Coral Assault, essentially. And Orphea has been abused before since like the Lambros days, and of course even Alexandros days with the Tavas build. So just seeing her again, and even in the V-Series era, is pretty cool actually. So there's some nostalgia behind it. She has resist too, so if that comes up, that may come up. Honestly, what's kind of nice is because she requires the boost. So if you're going against annoying clans that have G guards that target, then you don't really have to worry about the Orphea being kind of like picked out. Like, let's say you're going against Nubatama, like you're playing against Hanzo, and they have the G guard that actually grabs grade ones from the back row to guard with, like a domination effect. Because she has resist, that thing cannot touch her. So you're gonna push through with your Riptide. So actually, it helps in that case, like in that matchup, for example. For the grade twos, I am playing 4 Tidal, 3 Algos, and 4 Coral. So this time we're playing the V Series Tidal. So Tidal and Algos play a key part in this deck more than they often do in other builds. Because Tidal is flexible, most of the time I actually make sure that he attacks the first battle, so he is basically the first second wave battler. And then if you have another unit that can make the third battle, then that leaves you basically another circle. It could be the Excel circle or a column circle, it just depends how your field looks like. You have the Riptide to actually attack on the fourth battle, and then you have your Stride Lambros or any other restander like Navel Gazer, for example, and you can abuse the Riptide again, essentially. So this is more like your fourth battle enabler, literally for that reason. Ideally, if you can use Tidal so early, it's because he uses a Soul Blast rather than a Counter Blast. Cards like Andre, Orphea, and even Alexandros to a point use a Counter Blast, and so when you do an Orphea and an Andre at the same time, that's 2 Counter Blasts. And if you have anything like, let's say, an Alexandros, that's 3 Counter Blasts already that you're basically abusing Riptide in that turn. But with the Lambros, you only need 2, basically. There's a play that you can actually try to do with basically abuse 2 Orpheas in one turn. I can show that off at the end of this video. But ideally, if you use the Tidal Assault, then you have your Counter Blast available. Worst case scenario, you fall back to Algos if you need to. That's okay. Again, he's the first battle Counter Blast restand, and then of course on Vanguard, he can actually restand something else when he's the second battle or more as Vanguard. And that can make some key plays where you can filter with 2 Coral Assaults, or maybe you can restand something to have basically Riptide happen on the grade 2 turn as well. Just depends what you have on your field and the Counter Blast and the resources that you have. And then of course we have Coral Assault. He's just another beater. He also puts himself into the soul if there was 4th battles or more happening in this turn, and you draw a card, so you filter, you get to your pieces, basically digging deeper to your deck. So that's super helpful. And then if you have 4 rested units, he gets plus 15. So 24k beater by himself. He could be an easy target for Orphea or Andre to abuse if you don't have the Riptide. So he's a good unit to fall back, and he's just a good unit to supplement even in those formations that you make to be aggressive, or even in some plays where you do a Vallejo stride that he basically mirages himself at the end of the turn and you get back advantage. So stuff like that, basically. Onto the strides. We're playing 10 strides right here. As you can see, we're playing 4 Lambros, or Lambro back in the day. He's actually one of the Aquaforce's best strides back in the back in the day, and he still is. I highly recommend still playing 2 in different builds. You just never know when you need to go into Lambros rather over Alexandros. And for those that really don't know Lambros, 4th battle or more, when he attacks, you can restand 2 units. And if you have 2 face-up cards in the G zone after flipping, persona flipping, they get 10k for the turn, essentially. So that's where the first, restanding rear guards after the Vanguard attacks with the power-up came from. It started with Lambros, essentially. And it's a very key card because it doesn't cost any counterblast. So you can save your counterblast for your rear guards, such as Orphea again, Andre, and so on, or Algos, and all that kind of stuff. And ideally, if you can actually kill on first stride with Lambros, with Riptide, and all that kind of stuff. You can just chop down your opponent's hand that fast on first stride. Of course, if you had some tempo going in from the early game, it's basically kind of like a snowball effect where you're just like chomping, and you just have enough resources to do your turns effectively with pressure and everything. And so that's key. And if you do the first grade 3 right turn, let's say with Navel Gazer, if you have the heal, you can G-Guard and then you can go into Lambros, you will have the 10k power up on top of that. So that way, your Lambros turn is even more aggressive, especially if you have the Riptide or the Coral Assault, essentially. Alexandro, like I said, he's a good fallback, especially if, honestly, you have enough counterblast and you can mess with him. That's great. I still play the 2. And then, of course, Valeos is another great strike. Sometimes your field or hand doesn't look good for a good Lambros turn or a good Alexandros turn. And that's kind of where Valeos just kind of fits in. And sometimes, depending on the matchup, especially like Nubatama, I noticed that if I played against Hanzo, they play the Jamikango, basically. And it's like, are you going to retire my field, or are you going to chop down my hand, or are you going to do both somehow? And the harder I make it for them, the better it is for me. And so one of the things that I like Valeos about is that you can call a big board and get a hand back. And so now you have cards on the field and cards in the hand. So against the new Watama matchup, it gives their opponent like, well, I can go either way, but if they have the full-blown combo, then there's no stopping that, right? But it helps with that. And then, of course, if it's basically the GB2 turn, you can actually lock your opponent at 11k, which can make a lot of difference. Especially if you drop down like a Tidal Assault on an Excel Circle, and if you already rode grade 3, again, you have another Excel Circle, you can just poke, 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 and then Riptide kind of thing, and it just works out that way too. Keep in mind, he does cost a counterblast as well, so keep that in mind. Megiddo and Sabris. Megiddo, I have actually done Megiddo in a game before. And what's really nice is because, again, the problem with Megiddo, at least with Aquaforce, you didn't have big beaters like you did in Grand Blue. Grand Blue had access to Skull Dragons, and on top of that had a Night Storm to bring back another one. Aquaforce now can use it to really use Riptides, your Restanders, and then, for example, you can bring a booster like Orphea just to re-abuse a single Riptide. You don't have to bring multiple Riptides to have an aggressive Megiddo turn, but you can use cards that help promote the restanding still. And he does cost 2 counterblasts, but if you're flipping the G-Guard Gophilia, as soon as you ultimate strike, you no longer need the G-Zone after that. So you just flip them down as much as you can with enough resources that you make sure you can do your turn, and you can countercharge once or twice, because I play 2, so I can countercharge up to 2 times with Gophilias in the same turn. So you refund his cost, and you leave counterblasts for your restanding rear guards, or the Orpheas and Andres and all that kind of thing. So it makes that accessible. And of course, if you have the Excel Circle, which you will, you can abuse that Excel Circle even further. Sabreeze too, if your opponent decides to stay at grade 2, and if it makes sense to actually just Sabreeze them along with your combo pieces, that works. GB Generation Break is essential for Orphea and Andre only. Everything else is V-Series, so it doesn't really matter. So it just depends on your scenario and the resources that you have. If Sabreeze is the way to go, then do it. It's a stride with triple drive, and if that may be the extra push that you need to really just knock them out or put them in a bad position or they can't really recover, then go for it, essentially. Otherwise, you could just flip it later on with any of the generic strides like Alexandros or Valeos, for example. Now onto the G-Guards. We're playing 6 G-Guards. We are playing 2 Ionis. The thing about this deck, since you are committing a field, especially with Riptides, Tidal Assaults, Orpheus, all that kind of stuff, you actually have some field presence. And so Ionis actually comes into play more than just once, and it's possible. At the same time, you can flip a Gophilia, and basically you can promote that Alexandros turn if you have enough counterblasts, or if you're just using it for the shield, you flip the Gophilia. And again, Gophilia has a skill where if it's face up in the G zone, Soul Blast 1, you can either countercharge or you can unlock. You typically will countercharge. And 1, it can refund that cost, or 2, it can help basically promote pushing harder that turn, basically. So again, Ionis is big shield, especially if you field. Gophilia has the 5k on the second or third battle. Ice Barrier gets the plus 10k on the first or the fourth or more turn or battle. So he's still kind of relevant in those battle specifics. That's the thing about Aquaforce. They just have battle specific G-Guards, which are really annoying. Ionis can really be the one that gets big. But again, it's a Generation Break 1 G-Guard, and it costs a counterblast, and you need a field. So it's just kind of eh. And also, it gives resist to the units, and they have also the text that if they got hit, they don't die. Same thing with Dismo, basically. Dismo can now play a role because you are committing cards like Riptide, Corosal, Algos, or Tidal, and you're going more aggressively as early as possible. And if you have the opportunity to G-Guard and also protect one of those units so you still have it, Dismo is actually really appreciative in this build compared to the others. Most of the time when I'm playing with Aquaforce, I actually just make sure that I just get the best use out of my rear guards that I call to field, because I know that after that, they're pretty much gone, right? But with this build, you can throw in a Dismo, because honestly, most of the time you're going to use either Lambros, Alexandros, or Valeos, and maybe Ultimate Stride. And that's all you need. You don't need anything else, so you have the room, essentially. I'm going to give up some sample plays. So an ideal first stride turn, you can have something like this. All you need is really 2 counterblasts. One for the Orphea, one for the Andre, as I keep saying. So the battle sequence is basically you start with Tidal Assault, you do the Soul Blast, make sure it restands, and it's 14k because it's on the XL2 circle. You want to use XL2 most of the time because you can get that draw advantage, so that way you can actually have the combo pieces that you need to push. And then you can do the second battle, and then, oh, of course, you want to use Andre in the main phase. My bad. And actually give that skill to Riptide. And then, of course, this would be the third battle. And then, again, you have access to the fourth battle, essentially. And you can restand. So you have 2 options. You can use Andre right away, or you can save it. I would save it, personally, because Lambros can drive check, right? So that would be your fourth battle. Your opponent has to drop as well. Lambros attack, so you can restand anything, whatever is more relevant. Honestly, the Riptide's the most important thing. I'll just restand these 2. Persona flip, any drive checks go on Riptide. Depending on the battle formation, you could poke a rear guard or you could poke the vanguard. And then again, if you attack, use Andre's skill, restand, then Riptide with Orphea. And then the skill, of course, with Orphea, Counterblast, Soul Blast. In fact, you can Soul Blast the Andre that you just used, so that's supplying the resources that you need. And then again, boom. So you're doing really aggressive attacks here, and honestly, that was, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's basically 9 attacks, I think, if I counted that right. Yeah. Yeah, basically, Riptide attacked 4 times. Once by himself, restood by Lambros, so that's the second time, restood by Orphea, that's the third time, and Andre a 4th time. And then, of course, you got your restander, your other units, and then the Vanguard attack. So it's a good number of battles, too. And honestly, since it's Riptide, it's heavy attacking. So, yeah. Now I'm going to show a slightly different play. It basically takes the previous play and then oomps of it a little more. I know I mentioned that you could actually abuse 2 Orpheas in a single turn. So let's say you actually do the Andre play still in the main phase. So you're down to 2 available Counterblasts. You can only do this with 3 Counterblasts, just so be aware. And so the sequence would basically be 1, 2, and then attack with the rear guard only, not boosted with the Wheel Assault. Wheel Assault is actually essential in this part, and I think you already know where I'm going with this. So I'll explain once the skill goes by. Now the 4th battle, again, Riptide can attack, and then Lambros can attack, restand this, and restand this guy. All triggers on the Riptide, and then of course you can do Riptide, restand with Andre's skill, then attack like this at the end of the battle. Counterblast, Soul Blast, restand this. And then you can go to the right column now and attack. And then at the end of it, swap the 2 Orpheus. And there you go. You got the second Orphea behind the Riptide. And then you attack again with this column. And at the end of the battle, whoop, Counterblast 1. And restand once more the Riptide. And so in this case, you abuse Riptide another battle yet with an Orphea, a second one actually. And we also makes that happen. I don't know if you can go further than this, but this is something simple that honestly can be done. You play 3 Orphea, you play 4 Wheel Assault, you play 4 Riptide, and honestly you need a restander here, which could be in the form of Algos, ideally Tidal Assault, and then something right there. It could be a grade 3. And then of course you stride. And then if your Andre died, that could help with compensate with that. Or if you just don't have Andre anymore because he got retired or something, but whatever. Anyway, I'm talking too much. So I just wanted to show this off. This deck, again, goes credit to both Wavenation and to Zaee. StandUpTheSoryu, another Aquaforce YouTuber. Check out his content. He also did a deck profile basically of this deck as well. So you can see the slight differences on how we actually promote the deck. You might learn something from his video that I didn't go over, or maybe just the other way around. So with that, amigos, give it a like, comment down below, share, and subscribe. Signing out. Bye.